The buzz of the conference hall was electric, a hive of professionals all keen on weaving their way through the labyrinth of potential deals, insights, and connections. Yet, amidst this professional chaos, my world tilted on its axis the moment I met Alex. His smile was the first to catch me, genuine and warm. Unlike the practiced grins that filled the room, it was supposed to be a simple exchange, a swapping of business cards, and perhaps a brief discussion on market trends. But the spark between us was immediate, undeniable, and completely unexpected. "I think we can learn a lot from each other," Alex said, his voice confident yet inviting. It was the kind of line you'd expect at these events, but from him, it felt different. My response, a mix of professional courtesy and personal curiosity, led to the exchange of our numbers. It felt harmless at the time, a simple professional gesture, but the moment I saved his number, I felt a line had been crossed. The first message he sent later that day wasn't about work. It was personal, a comment on the speech I'd given, laced with a compliment that made my heart race. It was wrong, but I couldn't help but feel thrilled by the attention. Coffee meetings followed under the guise of professional collaboration. Yet, with each encounter, work became merely a backdrop to the growing personal connection between us. The thrill of the secret made each meeting more intoxicating. Lying to Mike about working late felt like stepping into a shadowy realm I never knew existed. Sitting across from Alex in that quiet bar, discussing dreams, fears, and everything in between, I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. The emotional affair deepened with every hidden text, every covert meeting. I was meticulous in covering my tracks, deleting messages, and saving Alex's number under a female coworker's name. The thrill of the secret, the adrenaline rush of the deceit, it was addictive. Then came the work trip, a legitimate excuse to spend time together outside the confines of the city. The boundaries we had been towing so carefully until then were finally crossed with a single kiss. It was a moment of weakness, of surrender to the building tension. It felt so wrong. Yet in his arms, everything seemed thrillingly right. But with the thrill came the inevitable guilt in the close calls. Mike found a hotel receipt, a tangible piece of evidence from our trip. My heart raced as I scrambled for an excuse, settling on the lie that it was for a team-building exercise. He seemed to accept it, but the look in his eyes, a mix of doubt and disappointment, haunted me. Each step into this affair pulled me further from the life I had with Mike, each lie a brick in the wall I was building between us. The fear of getting caught was always lurking in the background, a constant reminder of the double life I was leading. But the allure of Alex, the intensity of our connection, made it impossible to stop. I was caught in the thrill of the affair, blind to the consequences, until Mike's suspicions became too real to ignore. His hurt eyes, the betrayal in his voice when he confronted me with the receipt, was a wake-up call. But by then, it was too late. The affair had begun, and there was no turning back. The sunlight barely crept through the blinds of the rented apartment as Alex and I laughed over a shared secret joke, the kind that had become our ritual in these stolen moments. Each meeting in this hidden sanctuary intensified the thrill of our affair, casting a shadow over the reality of our actions. The secrecy of the apartment, chosen for its anonymity, wrapped around us like a cloak, making every encounter feel like an escape from the world outside. But with every secret meeting, the risk of being discovered loomed larger. That risk became nearly palpable the day a friend of Mike's spotted us together. My heart stopped as Alex and I walked out of a restaurant, straight into the unsuspecting gaze of Mike's friend, John. The casual smile on John's face didn't fool me. The surprise in his eyes spoke volumes. I scrambled for an explanation, my voice too bright as I introduced Alex as a coworker and quickly spun a tale of a work-related discussion. John's hesitant nod and a promise not to mention it to Mike did little to ease the knot in my stomach. Later that week, Alex's gift of aid to the affair. It was beautiful, far too opulent for just a friend, and accepting it felt like crossing yet another line. I hid it at the back of a drawer, a secret treasure that I dared only admire in solitude. The close call came when Mike, searching for a misplaced document, nearly stumbled upon my hidden keepsake. My heart raced as I diverted his attention with a hurried phone call, the sound of my pulse loud in my ears. As doubts about our actions began to gnaw at me, The excitement of being with Alex blinded me to the consequences. We planned a weekend getaway, ostensibly for a work conference. A lie smoothly delivered to Mike with a fabricated itinerary and feigned regret for the time apart. The thrill of planning something so bold with Alex was intoxicating, pushing aside the guilt that tried to surface. The facade began to crack upon our return when a colleague, someone I'd always considered just another fixture in the office landscape, approached me with a questioning glance. "Saw you and Alex at the coast this weekend. Big project? Huh?" Their tone was light, but the implication wasn't lost on me. Panic flared briefly as I fabricated a story about team dynamics and the need for personal bonding outside the office. The colleague's skeptical look lingered, but they dropped the subject, leaving me to wonder how thin the ice was beneath my feet. With each close call, each lie and secret rendezvous, the thrill of the affair was marred by the increasing burden of deceit. The balance between two worlds, one with Mike and the other with Alex, became a tightrope walk. Each step forward with Alex felt like a step away from Mike, from the life we had built together. The thrill of secrecy, once exhilarating, now felt like a chain around my neck, a constant reminder of the risk I was taking. The doubt and guilt that crept in during quiet moments began to overshadow the excitement, a foreboding sense that this could not end well. Yet, the pull of the affair was too strong, the connection with Alex too intoxicating to resist, propelling me further down a path I knew was fraught with consequences. The dim glow of the streetlights outside our rented apartment cast long shadows across the room as Alex and I talked deep into the night. With each secret rendezvous, the reality of my life with Mike seemed to fade further into the background, replaced by the vivid immediacy of my moments with Alex. It was during one of these nights, lying awake beside Alex, that the thought struck me with terrifying clarity. I was envisioning a life with him, a future far removed from the one I had committed to with my husband. The realization should have jolted me back to my senses, but instead, it was like sinking deeper into quicksand, the forbidden thoughts pulling me under. The affair was no longer just an escape, it had become a parallel reality, one in which I was increasingly losing myself. It wasn't until I missed our anniversary, a date that had been etched in my heart for years, that the weight of my choices began to press down on me. Mike's face, a mix of hurt and confusion when I muttered some half-baked excuse about being overwhelmed at work, was a picture I couldn't erase from my mind. The guilt was suffocating, yet the thrill of the affair was like a drug, numbing the remorse, keeping me tethered to this double life. In a moment of weakness, I confided in my closest friend, whispering the sordid details of the affair, pleading with her to keep my secret. The relief of confession was short-lived, replaced by a gnawing fear of discovery. Mike's intuitive gaze became harder to meet. His casual questions about my day felt loaded with unspoken accusations. Our home, once a sanctuary of love and comfort, had become a stage for a performance I no longer had the heart to keep up. Mike's suspicions grew like a shadow between us. I noticed him looking at phone records one evening, his brow furrowed in concentration. My heart raced as I realized he had stumbled upon the frequent calls to a number that wouldn't match any of my stories. The walls were closing in, and in a desperate bid for control, I rehearsed lies, crafting stories to cover tracks that were too deeply imprinted to erase. The confrontation I had been dreading came unexpectedly. One evening, Mike quietly approached me, holding the necklace Alex had given me, a tangible piece of evidence I had carelessly thought hidden. His voice was steady, but the hurt was unmistakable. Where did this come from? Faced with the undeniable proof of my betrayal, I stumbled through a lie, claiming it was a gift from a female friend. The lie was thin, almost transparent, and we both knew it. The tension in the air was palpable, a silent storm that threatened to sweep away the last remnants of our marriage. Mike's eyes searched mine, looking for the woman he married. But all he found was a stranger. The gulf between us had never felt wider, and in that moment, the full magnitude of my actions crashed into me. The life I had with Mike, the trust we had built, was crumbling under the weight of my choices. The realization was a bitter pill, a truth I had been running from, now staring me in the face, demanding to be acknowledged. The morning sun barely peeked through the curtains as I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Mike. The thrill of the day ahead with Alex sent a jolt of excitement through me, mingled with a pang of guilt that I pushed to the back of my mind. Today was not just another secret rendezvous. It was a trial, a day to live the life I had been fantasizing about, away from the shadows. I dressed in silence, each movement deliberate, as if preparing for a journey far longer than just a day. As I closed the door behind me, leaving behind the life I had built with Mike, the weight of my actions settled in, heavy but overshadowed by the anticipation of the day ahead. Alex and I had planned this day with meticulous care, a brief escape from the reality that tethered us. Yet, as I drove away, I couldn't shake off the feeling of stepping over an invisible line from which there could be no return. The day unfolded in a blur of laughter and shared secrets, a glimpse into the life that could be. But in the midst of it all, a call from a coworker pierced the bubble we had created around us. "Mike stopped by your office today, looking for you. I might have accidentally mentioned your day off with Alex," she said, her voice a mix of confusion and concern. My heart stopped. The walls of our carefully constructed sanctuary crumbled around me, the reality of my actions crashing down with relentless force. I knew what awaited me at home. The confrontation was inevitable. The drive back felt like moving towards a precipice, each mile bringing me closer to the edge. The moment I saw Mike, the weight of my betrayal etched into his face, I knew that the facade had crumbled. He confronted me with undeniable evidence: the phone records, the coworker slip, the world I had tried so desperately to keep separate collided, and I could no longer deny the truth. Breaking down, I confessed to the affair, the words tearing through the last thread of trust between us. Mike's reaction was not one of anger, but of deep sadness and disappointment. "I had my suspicions," he said, his voice breaking, "but I hoped I was wrong." The hurt in his eyes was a reflection of the betrayal he felt, a mirror to the guilt that consumed me. The realization of what I had lost, the life we had built together, hit me with staggering force. The excitement of the affair, once a blinding light, now faded into the stark light of reality. In the aftermath, I made the decision to be with Alex, leaving behind the remnants of my marriage. Moving out of the home I shared with Mike, I stepped into a new life, one that I had convinced myself was worth the sacrifices. But as the days turned into weeks, the daily realities of life with Alex began to surface. The excitement that had once fueled our affair gave way to the mundane challenges of shared life, revealing conflicting personalities and priorities that had been masked by the thrill of secrecy. Living with Alex, I began to see the illusion of the life I had envisioned, a stark contrast to the complexities of our reality. The dreams that had seemed so vivid during our stolen moments faded, leaving behind the truth of our incompatibility. The life I had left behind with Mike, once seen through a lens of longing for something more, now appeared in a starkly different light, a reminder of what I had sacrificed in pursuit of a mirage. The morning I received the divorce papers from Mike marked the end of a chapter one had never imagined closing. The reality of my actions, the weight of the decisions that had led to this moment, settled over me like a dense fog. There was no anger in Mike's message, just a finality that spoke volumes of the hurt and betrayal he had endured. The swift proceedings that followed felt surreal, each signature erasing the years we had spent building a life together. The aftermath of the divorce was like waking up to a world I no longer recognize. Friends and family, once the bedrock of my support system, were now divided. Whispers of my actions echoed in the silence of those who chose to distance themselves, their disappointment a mirror to my own self-loathing. In the eyes of some, I had become a cautionary tale, a subject of hushed conversations and pitted glances. Living with Alex, away from the life I had known, exposed the frailty of our foundation. The novelty that once made our relationship feel like an escape now revealed its cracks under the weight of daily life. Arguments became our new routine, the initial passion giving way to resentment and unmet expectations. Alex's commitment, once unwavering, began to waver, and I found myself clinging to the remnants of what we had, afraid to confront the reality of our situation. The financial implications of the divorce settlement further strained my already precarious situation. Adjusting to a single income was challenging enough without the added burden of the financial commitments Alex and I had made together. Each bill, each unexpected expense, was a reminder of the stability I had sacrificed in pursuit of a mirage. As the months passed, the depth of my loss became painfully clear. I missed not just Mike, but the companionship, the shared history, and the mutual support that had once defined our marriage. The realization that I had traded a life built on love and trust for a fleeting fantasy was a bitter pill to swallow. Hearing through mutual friends that Mike was seeing someone else struck a chord I hadn't expected. Jealousy and regret gnawed at me. The news of his moving on serving as a stark reminder of what I had lost. The life we had shared, the future we had envisioned together, was now a chapter closed, his narrative diverging from mine in a direction I could no longer influence. The final straw came in the form of a bitter argument with Alex, a culmination of months of tension and unspoken grievances. The break was inevitable, a harsh yet necessary end to a relationship that had started in deceit and ended in disillusionment. Left alone to face the consequences of my choices, I was forced to confront the harsh truth. In seeking happiness elsewhere, I had dismantled the very foundation of my life. Now, standing amidst the ruins of my decisions, I realized the journey ahead was mine to navigate alone. The path to redemption, to rebuilding the trust one had shattered, and the relationships I had neglected, was uncertain. Yet, in the depths of my solitude, I understood that the first step toward healing was accepting responsibility for the choices that had led me here. The road to forgiveness, both from those I had hurt and from myself, promised to be long and fraught with challenges. But it was a journey I was now ready to embark on, armed with the lessons learned from a past I could not change but was determined to atone for. The silence of the apartment amplifies my thoughts, a stark contrast to the life I once knew. Living alone, each day blends into the next, filled with reflection and a heavy sense of regret. The affair that once seemed like an escape now appears as a series of reckless decisions that led to my downfall. The thrilling moments with Alex, once bright and intoxicating, now cast long shadows over my reality, each one a reminder of what I've lost. In a moment of sheer desperation, I find myself dialing Mike's number, the familiar digits now feeling foreign under my fingertips. The phone rings, each tone echoing my hope for forgiveness, for a second chance at the life I recklessly threw away. When Mike answers, his voice is kind, a painful reminder of the man I fell in love with, the man I betrayed. I stumble through my apology, my plea for reconciliation, but his response, though gentle, is firm. "I've moved on," he says, and with those words, the last thread of hope dissolves into the cold air. The finality in his voice marks the end of a chapter, the closing of a door I can never reopen. Adjusting to this new normal is a daily struggle. The life I lead now is a direct consequence of my actions, marked by a profound sense of loss and regret. Friends and family, once pillars of support, are now divided, some offering tentative support while others keep their distance. A constant reminder of the cost of my betrayal. My story, once filled with love and promise, has become a cautionary tale, a stark warning of the devastation that lies in the wake of infidelity. The process of starting over is daunting. Each day presents a new challenge, an opportunity to rebuild from the ruins of my past. I focus on personal growth, on understanding the depth of my decisions, and the impact they've had not just on my life, but on those I love. The journey is filled with introspection, a painful yet necessary path to self-discovery. Learning to forgive myself is perhaps the hardest part of all. The guilt and self-blame are constant companions, whispering reminders of my failings. Yet, in the midst of this struggle, I find moments of clarity, glimpses of understanding and acceptance. Forgiving myself doesn't mean forgetting my actions or absolving myself of responsibility, but it does mean acknowledging my humanity, my capacity for error, and my potential for change. As I begin to form new relationships, both platonic and romantic, the lessons of my past are never far from my mind. Building trust and transparency becomes the foundation of each new connection, a testament to the person I strive to become. These relationships, built on the ashes of my past, are fragile yet filled with promise. each one a step towards a future defined not by my mistakes, but by my willingness to learn from them. The road ahead is uncertain, filled with challenges and opportunities for growth. Yet, in this uncertainty lies a chance for redemption, for building a life marked not by the shadows of the past, but by the light of understanding, forgiveness, and the courage to move forward. The echo of my past decisions reverberates through the silent moments of my day, a constant reminder of the tumultuous path I've walked. The affair, its discovery, and the painful aftermath have left indelible marks on my life, shaping the person I've become. Each day, I confront the legacy of my choices, facing the consequences with a resolve born from necessity and a desire for redemption. In the wake of turmoil, I find myself at the cusp of new beginnings. The process is slow, often painstaking, but marked by a quiet determination to redefine my life on my own terms. Happiness, once a fleeting concept, begins to take root in the simplest of moments, in the warmth of the sun on my face, in the laughter shared with friends, in the solitude that no longer feels like loneliness. It's in these moments that I realize the journey forward is not just about moving away from my past, but actively building a future where I can thrive. The lessons learned from my journey are harsh but invaluable. Honesty, once sacrificed at the altar of fleeting desires, now forms the cornerstone of my existence. The value of commitment, deeply tarnished by my actions, now shines as a guidepost for my relationships. Betrayal, with its bitter aftertaste, serves as a constant reminder of the pain that lies in deceit's wake. These lessons, hard-earned and deeply felt, inform every decision I make, every relationship I nurture. Finding peace amidst the chaos of my past mistakes becomes a daily endeavor. It's a peace that comes not from external validation, but from an internal reckoning, a deep, abiding acceptance of my past, and a commitment to live with integrity and self-awareness. This peace, once elusive, now anchors me, offering solace in the knowledge that while I cannot change the past, I have the power to shape my future. Venturing into a new relationship, I carry the of my past with a newfound grace. This time, openness and honesty are not just ideals, but the very foundation upon which we build. The scars of my past serve not as a burden, but as a testament to my growth, a reminder of the journey I've undertaken to arrive at this place of readiness to love and be loved, with all the vulnerability and strength that entails. In this journey, I discover the importance of self-love, not as a cliché copyright, but as a vital component of my healing. Understanding that true happiness begins within, I learn to forgive myself, to embrace my imperfections, and to celebrate my strengths. This self-love becomes my compass, guiding me through moments of doubt and bolstering me in times of strength. Giving back to the community emerges as a path to making amends, not just with those I've hurt, but with myself. Volunteering becomes a way to connect, to offer parts of myself in service to others, finding purpose and fulfillment in the act of giving. It's in these moments of selflessness that I find a deeper sense of belonging and a clearer vision of the person I aspire to be. My story, marked by moments of despair and triumph, is not unique, but it is mine. It's a continuous journey of growth, learning, and striving to be a better person each day. With each step forward, I embrace the complexities of my humanity, recognizing that while the past may shape us, it does not define us. The journey continues, an ongoing test. The conference room buzzed with the same stale energy as always. Mark shifted in his chair, trying not to let his mind wander to the pile of laundry waiting for him at home. Another slide flickered on the screen, graphs, projections, the kind of stuff that made his eyelids heavy. As the speaker droned on, his gaze drifted across the room, and that's when he saw her. Sarah? He didn't even know her name yet, but there was something about her. She was laughing, not at the presentation, but at something someone had whispered in her ear. Her eyes sparkled, brighter than the fluorescent lights. It had been years since he'd felt a jolt like that, a flicker of something exciting. He knew he shouldn't be staring, but he couldn't seem to look away. Later, at the hotel bar, he found himself inexplicably drawn to her. Okay, maybe not so inexplicable. She was beautiful, clearly smart from those few interactions he'd overheard, and there was an ease about her. "Can I buy you a drink?" he asked before his brain could catch up with his mouth. She smiled, a slow, amused smile he felt right down to his toes. Sure, but only if you promise not to talk about sales projections. They talked, a lot, about everything it seemed, from frustrating clients to childhood dreams they tucked away long ago. With Sarah, he didn't feel like tired. Old Mark, the one who made dad jokes and fixed leaky faucets. He didn't even notice Susan's usual evening check-in text. He was having the kind of conversation that felt electric, the kind he and Susan hadn't had in years. The night stretched out way past what felt reasonable for a work conference. Their drinks were replaced, their laughter probably a little too loud. At one point, while walking her back to her hotel room, it hit him. This was dumb. Susan would kill him, Sarah was trouble, but then there was her smile at the door, and a good night. Mark, that sounded a lot more like an invitation than a farewell. The image of Susan, back at home asleep, probably in her worn-out college t-shirt, snapped into focus. God, he felt like crap. It was one night, one stupid night, just a bit of harmless fun. He'd forget about Sarah in the morning. Mark did his best to convince himself as he drifted off to sleep. Mark had always prided himself on being a predictable guy. Order the same burger, or the same gray socks every Tuesday, that was him. Routines made him feel safe, in control. But that night, with Sarah across the table, the familiar buzz of red wine in his veins, something in him shifted. They moved from the restaurant to a little wine bar tucked away on a side street. He usually hated places like that, too crowded, too loud. But with Sarah, it was different. She ordered a bottle of something he couldn't pronounce, and he laughed, a real laugh. Not the polite chuckle he used with clients. Tell me something. She leaned in, her voice low. If you could do anything, change anything about your life right now, what would it be? He should have told her about the kids, their college funds, his stupid but steady job. But those words felt heavy in his mouth. Instead, he thought about the half-finished basement project, his old band t-shirt shoved in a drawer, that fishing trip with his dad he'd kept putting off. I don't know, he said finally, and damn if it didn't sound desperate, even to his own ears. The night blurred after that. More wine, a taxi ride, the feel of her keycard against his palm in the hotel hallway. It was so wrong. He knew that with a bone-deep certainty. Yet, the moment that door swung open, the wave of regret was washed away by something hotter, bolder. He'd forgotten what it felt like to be reckless. Waking up beside Sarah in those crisp white hotel sheets was like being dumped in ice water. The shame rushed in, a full-body shiver that made him nauseous. Mark fumbled for his clothes, mumbled something about an early meeting, and fled the room. On the cab ride back to the conference center, he stared out the window and repeated the same phrase over and over in his head. One time, one stupid time, he could fix this. He and Susan, they weathered tough times before. This would just be a blip, a mistake he'd never make again. I found myself checking my phone more than usual. Not to call Mark, I couldn't bring myself to do that, but just in case. It was stupid. Every buzz, every chime sent a jolt of panic through me. What if it was him, fumbling for an excuse about a late meeting? Worse, what if it was her? The worst one came a couple of days later. Just 3 words. Last night was. My thumb hovered over that delete button. I didn't even need to see the rest. No name, no picture, but I knew. That sinking feeling in my stomach. It was the same one from when I was a kid, caught with a hand in the cookie jar. Mark was jumpy too at first. I figured it was work stress, some big project going off the rails. But then came the flowers, a vase of wilted roses from the grocery store that he tried to pass off as some special occasion. He started taking the kids out for ice cream on random weeknights, asking me all these questions about my day. Questions he usually couldn't be bothered to remember the answers to. It was pathetic, watching him try so hard. Like if he just played the perfect husband, the guilt would disappear. Part of me wanted to scream at him, to shake him and make him confess. But another, colder part of me, just sat back and watched the show. There were moments I thought about texting her, telling her to back off, threatening her, something, but that felt desperate, and what would I even say? Hi, it's Mark's boring old wife. Please leave my leftovers alone? Pathetic. Instead, I started paying attention. Late nights on his laptop after I'd gone to bed. Hushed phone calls when he thought I was in the shower. He was slipping up, getting sloppy. And with each little slip, that anger inside me grew. Not the hot, explosive kind. More like a low burn. A steady fire I was going to let simmer until I was ready. The day Mark's next work trip was announced, my stomach dropped. Same damn city, same hotel chain even, from what I could tell on that stupid corporate booking website. I told myself not to be paranoid, that he'd learned his lesson. Maybe he had, but I wasn't the type to trust that easily anymore. I started planning, not big plans, just little things. A new haircut, the kind that made me feel a bit sharper, older. A few late nights, working, at my friend Beth's house, so there wouldn't be an empty bed waiting for Mark when he got back. It might sound petty, but each small action made me feel a bit less helpless, a bit more in control. Then came Sarah's email, landed in my inbox with an innocent subject line about some project they had collaborated on months ago. Just a quick follow-up question, totally work-related. But there it was, her name staring up at me. A little jolt of poison. At first, I ignored it, hit delete, and went about my day. That night though, when Mark was snoring beside me, I found myself scrolling through my deleted folder. Her message was still there. A little digital landmine just waiting to go off. I told myself it was research, just checking what she was up to, gauging the threat level. But as soon as I hit reply, I knew I was lying. The words flowed easily, a back and forth about reports and meetings, sprinkled with a little casual flirtation. Nothing major, nothing even Mark would notice if he stumbled across it. Yet, those few sent lines felt like throwing a match into a gasoline can. The next morning, I felt sick with guilt. And something else, a thrill. It had been so long since I felt anything close to excitement. Talking to Sarah, it was like a jolt of electricity after years of numbness. Was this what Mark felt with her? That buzz of possibility, of danger? The thought made my blood boil. Mark was gone again. Another project, another late-night flight. I'd packed his suitcase with practiced efficiency, the same shirts, the same toiletries, the same half-hearted kiss goodbye. A knot formed in my stomach as I watched him pull out of the driveway. It wasn't sadness anymore, more like a dull ache, the kind you get used to. The house felt too big, too empty with him gone. The kids had their own busy lives, school, friends, all the stuff that had filled the spaces Mark and I used to occupy. That first night, I poured myself a glass of wine, a big one, and turned on some mindless reality TV. But I couldn't focus on the manufactured drama. Instead, I found myself on Google Maps, staring at that damn hotel from his last trip. It was stupid, I knew, but as I scrolled through photos of the lobby, the generic bar, something shifted in me. It wasn't jealousy exactly, more a kind of cold determination. The lies were the worst part. Traffic was crazy, he'd say, pulling in well past midnight. Or, the client dinner ran late. He thought he was slick, but his excuses were getting weaker with each repetition. I stopped calling him out on it. Let him think he was getting away with it. It made it all the more satisfying when I'd find those little pieces of evidence. A receipt for a fancy restaurant stuffed in his coat pocket. A text from an unknown number just a little too late at night. I started keeping a notebook. Dates, times, inconsistencies in his stories. It felt a bit crazy, a bit obsessive. But each time I jotted something down, it was like taking back a tiny sliver of control. Sometimes I'd fantasize about confronting him, throwing the notebook at his feet, screaming, "Explain this." But I knew how that would end. Denials, excuses, maybe even a few tears on his part. And in the end, I'd still be stuck in this marriage, just more bitter, more resentful than before. No, I needed a better plan. One that would leave him scrambling. Not me. Chicago this weekend, babe. Some big client thing. Mark mumbled from the bedroom, tossing wrinkled clothes into his suitcase. If he was a better liar, he'd at least try to sound apologetic. I tried to muster up some fake disappointment, something about missing him for a few days. But the words stuck in my throat. It was easier to just nod. Offer a quick, have a good trip, and watch him go. He wasn't going to Chicago. I knew that much. This time, the lies didn't even bother me. It had become a kind of morbid game. When I was pretty sure I was winning, the minute he was out the door, I was on my laptop. First stop, Those discount travel booking sites. Not the corporate ones he used for work, the cheaper ones for last-minute romantic getaways. I searched by dates, narrowed it down to the general region where I knew Sarah lived. Bingo. A cozy bed and breakfast, about 2 towns over from her place. The name of the reservation was a woman's, a name I didn't recognize. And it wasn't booked with his work email either, but a personal one I'd forgotten he even had. The proof was right there in black and white, a confirmation number and a little heart emoji next to the dates. I felt a surge of disgust, and something else too. A strange kind of satisfaction. Our anniversary was a couple of weeks later. Mark, ever predictable, made reservations at the same overpriced Italian place we went to every year. He even bought me the usual pearl necklace, like he was checking off items on a to-do list, not celebrating a woman he supposedly loved. Sitting across from him, watching him raise a glass to us, was almost comical. The man barely knew me anymore. Maybe he never really did. It made the lies he'd been feeding me feel even more pathetic. I could barely touch my food, the guilt choking him. Not me. I was playing a longer game, making plans he couldn't even fathom. It was only a matter of time until those plans came to fruition, and he'd be the one left blindsided. I picked the fight on a Wednesday. He was on his laptop, probably emailing Sarah, or looking up romantic weekend spots. I slammed my coffee mug down on the kitchen counter, making him jump. "What's gotten into you lately?" I asked. No small talk, no gentle hinting. I was done with that. Mark did that thing he always does when he's caught off guard, the nervous half laugh, the scratching the back of his neck. Nothing. Why? Is something wrong? He was so bad at this. It was almost embarrassing. Don't play dumb, Mark. We both know what's going on. My voice came out sharper than I'd intended. He tried the tired excuses. Stressed at work, project deadlines, the usual crap. But I cut him off. Told him about the Chicago trip that wasn't to Chicago, the little B&B I'd found online. I didn't mention her name, kept it vague, but he knew. The color drained from his face. The fight was ugly, yelling, accusations. The kids huddled in their rooms pretending not to hear. At one point he blurted out, "At least she makes me feel alive." It was like being punched in the gut. Then, just as quickly as it started, it petered out. We just stared at each other. The space between us filled with a silence heavier than any words could be. Finally, he mumbled some pathetic apology, grabbed his jacket, and left. I heard the garage door rumble open, his car backing down the driveway. He knew where he'd be going. The next day came the pressure from her. An email popped up on his phone, left carelessly on the kitchen counter. Something about needing a decision, about not waiting around forever. My hands shook as I deleted it, trying to block out the images it had conjured in my mind. Mark came home late, smelling of cheap cologne and desperation. I'd already packed a few things for the kids and me. We stayed with my sister that night. My plan was starting to take shape, and for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of something like hope. It wasn't the sweet, innocent kind of hope from before. It was something sharper, something more determined. It was the kind of hope that would help me survive what came next. Mark tried to be discreet, sneaking around on his phone whenever I wasn't looking, deleting his browser history obsessively. But I wasn't an idiot. Late one night, I heard what sounded like muffled whispers coming from the guest bedroom. I pushed the door open and there he was, hunched over his laptop with a panicked expression on his face. "What are you doing?" I tried to keep my voice even, but a tremor ran through it. He slammed the laptop shut so quickly it almost fell off the bed. "Nothing, just checking some work emails," he stammered. At midnight, my laugh was harsh, humorless. "Come on, Mark, just how long do you think you can keep this up?" He tried to explain, mumbling something about a potential new apartment, a fresh start. It would have been laughable if it hadn't been so damn pathetic. He was grasping at straws, and I think he knew it. The worst one came a few nights later. The shrill ring of his phone pierced the silence of our bedroom, jolting me awake. Sarah flashed across the screen, a name I'd only whispered in my darkest moments. Mark fumbled for it, hitting the silence button in panic. "Who's Sarah?" I asked, sitting straight up in bed. My voice was cold as ice. He made up some story about a new coworker, a project they were collaborating on. It was the weakest lie I'd ever heard, But the fight was gone out of me. I just lay back down, my eyes fixed on the ceiling. The next morning, the words weren't necessary. We both knew the truth. It hung in the air between us, thick and suffocating. When I looked at him, I no longer saw my husband. He was a stranger, a man who'd been lying to me for God knows how long. That day I started making calls. To a lawyer, to a realtor, to anyone who could help me unravel the life we'd built. It felt strange, moving these pieces around, planning for a future that didn't include him. Yet, with every call, every form filled out, a weight lifted off my shoulders. I was finally taking control of my own story. I stopped talking to Mark, not in a dramatic, screaming way that would take more energy than I had left, but the casual conversations we used to have about the kids' schedules or what to make for dinner, those were gone. He noticed, of course. He'd hover in doorways, open his mouth as if to speak, then close it again. The silence stretched out between us like a yawning chasm, and in that silence, I made my plans. It wasn't about dramatic gestures. No throwing his clothes out on the lawn or smashing his precious golf clubs. It was the small things. A few of my things disappearing into a suitcase, quiet phone calls with my mom, my eyes scanning apartment listings late at night after I thought he was asleep. One evening, he finally broke. He found me in the kitchen, my hands clenched around a mug of cold tea. His voice was hoarse, almost pleading. "Susan, please, we need to talk about this." And that's when I let it all out. Not just the affair, though God knows that was bad enough, but the years of neglect, of him taking me for granted, of me feeling so lonely in my own marriage. I told him how I used to wake up in the middle of the night and wish it were all just a bad dream. He tried to interrupt, to apologize. "I know I screwed up. I'll do anything. We can get counseling, anything." I cut him off with a raised hand. "It's too late, Mark. Way too late." The look on his face was something between shock and despair. He mumbled something about still loving me, about wanting to fix things, but his words held no weight. They were as hollow as the promises he'd broken so many times before. "Love?" I scoffed. "Do you even know what that word means anymore?" The silence descended again. I picked up my tea and turned away. As far as I was concerned, the conversation was over. There was nothing left to say. I had a future to build, one that no longer involved him. I found the apartment on a quiet street lined with old oak trees, just a short drive from the kids' school. It was small, barely more than a bedroom and a combined kitchen-living area, but it was mine. There was something so satisfying about signing that lease with my own name. No mark scrawled beside it. Moving day was a Tuesday. He was at work, the kids at classes, leaving me with the whole day in a rented moving van. I enlisted the help of my brother and a few close friends. We made it look like a whirlwind hit the house, furniture disassembled, boxes overflowing. I left out some of Mark's clothes, his toiletries still on the bathroom counter, just to make it look less planned. When they'd all gone, I sat down on the bare living room floor for a moment. The house, once so filled with family chaos, now echoed with emptiness. A flicker of guilt pierced me. This had been our home, the place we built a life together. It was gone now. There was no going back. I walked to the kitchen counter and scrawled a short note, explained in the most practical terms possible that I'd left, where I could be reached if necessary. His phone, keys, anything else of his importance, I left stacked neatly beside it. Then I slipped off my wedding ring, placed it on top of the pile, and walked out the door, locking it behind me. He must have felt the shift the minute he walked through the door that night. The missing furniture, the half-empty closets, my scent erased from the air. And then the note, the ring, the finality of it all. I pictured him sitting there alone in that cavernous house, the silence pressing in on him. It was cruel, maybe, but he'd earned it. He had years to listen, years to change. Instead, he'd chosen Sarah, or excitement, or whatever lie he told himself to justify his selfishness. Now it was his turn to face the consequences, his turn to